Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 64 of the Hunger for the Hustle podcast. I am joined today by Rhianna Campbell, live from Washington, D.C. I am live in Melbourne. It's 10:30 a.m. in the morning here. Rhianna, what time is it there in Washington?
It is 6:30 p.m. in the evening.
6:30 p.m. A contrast not only in the time, but we talked about this just off camera before. Rhianna was a little bit envious because I've got the sunshine here. The summer is on the way in Australia, whereas winter is certainly on the way in the States.
Yes.
Now, Rhianna built, grew, and sold a multi-million-dollar real estate business, but that is not where she started. She started as a single teen mom, and we are going to be here exploring that today and what really drove Rhianna's hunger for the hustle in that journey and getting that done. So, Rhianna, welcome to the show. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about that journey, about how it was for you, and about really where it all started.
Yeah. So, it was so challenging when I was a teenager, and I found myself pregnant at 17, my senior year in high school, and with that came all my hopes and dreams shattered. I think, when I looked at motherhood, I thought that I would have to set all of my own desires to the side and just focus on raising this kid and not messing her up. And, I put that off for a while, but something inside me just had to do something. I had the drive. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I had a gift that I had to share with the world. And so, I took on motherhood with some fierce responsibility. And when I found my opportunity, I took it, and I started my journey from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the hunger for the hustle's coming through already. I can't wait to explore some more of it. Now, how long after you had your child did the opportunity come up to get into real estate, and how did that come about?
So I think when my daughter turned 5, when she got into elementary school, and I put her in public school so I wouldn't have to keep paying for it, was when I decided that I no longer had to work a full-time job and I could get my education. And so I went back to college after I dropped out very early on when she was young, and decided to get my degree. And a couple years in, got thrown into an internship at a mortgage banking, a brokerage firm, and got exposed to what real estate was like from the loan side of things. And that just sparked my interest from there. That was exactly what I needed to really start digging into real estate the way that I wanted to.
So you found an opportunity, you seized it, you thought, I better study this so I have a good understanding of it, right? And you did the schooling, you found a good position. But at this point where you got to the stage where you built, grew, and sold this multi-million-dollar business, did you have those big dreams at the start, or did they kind of form as you were going along?
Yeah, they formed as I was going along. So after I did my mortgage loan experience, after my internship, I decided to get a job there during the summer. And I worked during the summer, loved doing mortgage loans, but really loved working with people and educating people on what it was like to buy a home. And I knew that there was something else there, and loan mortgages was a little too limiting for me. So I went and got my education, my real estate education. After I had gotten my degree, I went to just learn more about real estate and real estate investing. And after that, I learned about wholesaling and what it was like to wholesale in real estate, and decided, okay, that would be a good place for me to start because it seems like I could get some quick cash. And I ended up posting a bunch of signs letting people know that I was a wholesaler in the area, and got a bunch of calls from investors who owned real estate. And this was during 2008, during the mortgage crisis. There were so many investors who were having a really hard time because they had tenants who weren't paying rent, and they just didn't know where to turn. And that thrust me into property management, which is not what I studied at all. It was just something I had to learn as I went along. But real estate was never going to be a job for me. It was just going to be a little side hustle business. And I knew that in order for me to take care of my family, I needed to bring in income. So I was going to have to find a job. So I had my full-time job and I had my real estate business. And it just kind of grew from there. I started just learning one little thing and then another little thing. I started doing home renovations. I was flipping properties for tenants and working with one investor who just owned maybe 30 properties in my area. He let me kind of do what I wanted to do. And then I realized that I wanted to work with a different demographic of people. The investor that I had was kind of a slumlord, and I wasn't too keen on that. And decided like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me just kind of revisit and think about who I wanted to work with. So I partnered up with another real estate business owner, and we together grew this really amazing business. But again, started off with the idea that it was just going to be a little side money, that it was just going to be, kind of a side business, and wasn't too sure exactly how it was going to take off and when it was going to take off. But it was something to do in addition to my full-time job until that didn't work out anymore. Until that.
Yeah. I know how that goes. I've done that transition. How did it play out for you? Was it that you just got to a point where you were like, well, I'm earning more money here than I am here, or I don't have enough time to give to the people that I work for anymore? Like, which one was it?
Yeah.
All of them.
When you first start in business, you're dedicating so much time and not getting the payout. So very early on, it wasn't that I was collecting any of the money. It was just something that I saw that was really blossoming and wanted to continue to dedicate time to it. So I took a risk. I got to a point with my full-time job that I wasn't as focused as I should have been, and it became more of a burden than a joy. And I realized that I had to make a decision that if I was going to do a good job in the business, I couldn't continue to work full-time. So I went out on a leap of faith and hoped for the best and took a pay cut and just kind of made it work. And it ended up obviously working out really well. But at the time, felt like a decision that I wasn't too sure made sense for me, given that I had a young family to take care of.
Yeah. Now, something you touched on there, that you paired up, you collaborated with someone to help grow the business. Do you think, let's talk about the value of that, because I think that's something that's really valuable. Do you think you would have done it on your own without collaborating with someone else as a partner?
So I started off it on my own, and that was a good experience. I think one of the things that is challenging when you're starting a business is when it's not making money, it's hard. You have a hard time paying people to really work with you. And like everything, business, life, it's a team sport. And so the more people you have involved, the better. But when you're first starting as an owner of a business, you're not expecting to make any money. You're just knowing that you're putting your effort in and you'll get some type of payout at some point in time. And you're hoping for the best. But you have to find people, especially like, I hired some of my friends to work for me very early on, but I had a very small budget. I had, little to no money to be able to really get people who were going to do work for me. But finding someone else, another partner, they're just as invested in the growth of that business as you are. And it's a different perspective than hiring an employee. And so very early on, it was good to have a business partner that was just really dedicated to making the company grow and pouring the time and the energy and the effort, not knowing what kind of payout it was going to bring, and not even having a salary at that point at the very beginning stages. So cool.
And I can imagine, and we always talk about challenges on this show because it's a space where you're in the challenge and you got to grow. You either choose to fail, fold, and quit, or you choose to carry on, to push forward and to grow. And I'm sure that, particularly, I know from my own experience, when you start a new venture, new business, the challenges come thick and fast. So perhaps you could share a few of the challenges you had with us.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many different stages of business that you're not quite sure what you've gotten yourself into. I felt in over my head so many times. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? When you hire people and they start depending on you for a job, that's when it really gets real. You know, it's more than just your investment. You have people who are counting on you to continue to pay them so that they can live their life. And so, you know, that was kind of one of the first challenges, was hiring, and hiring right, not just hiring like someone who's going to hustle and make whatever money and then leave, but hiring someone who was like a real dedicated employee who saw your business as being something real and wanting to dedicate their time and energy into it, and then paying them and then being able to maintain that salary no matter what happened. That was, I think, one of the most nerve-wracking experiences to even begin with. And then the business had ups and downs. You know, there were times when I wasn't too sure what I was doing. I mean, I was flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't know, I didn't have any formal training in it. I didn't really have a formal business education. And so I just kind of learned as I went along and made some mistakes. And some of them were pretty costly mistakes. I had, you know, lawsuits come my way. I had, you know, people who wanted to sue me, and, you know, we had to settle, and, you know, like things like that really make you question why you're in business. You know, when things get really challenging, you start to wonder, you know, am I doing this for the right reason? Why am I doing this? Is this okay? Well, then when you keep pushing along and keep going, you keep growing, and you realize like, okay, I think I have something here and it's worth something. There's something of value here, even though it's not a ton. You start realizing that there's something there that you should keep pushing through.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think in those moments where you become aware that you now have a bigger responsibility, you're not just paying for yourself and your own livelihood, but the people you employ. That's a huge thing. And when those, you know, those other challenges come, I know people are very fond of suing people in America, and obviously, unfortunately, that happened to you. It happened to you a couple of times there. But it's about, in business, it is a roller coaster, but I always say hold on tight, because the rewards are well worth the ride of that roller coaster. But it's about not focusing, I think, on those small moments in the moment, because you can just get too lost in it, and knowing that you're working towards a bigger picture. And how does that bigger picture look? Okay, look, someone's got a lawsuit against me right now, but that's just right now, and that will be done, and I'll get through it, and then we'll carry on trending and moving upwards. And yeah, I found a few times it's easy to get lost in those little points and just get real frustrated with it. But you've got to step back, take a breath, and look at the bigger picture and think, you know, why am I doing this? What am I working towards? And let that be the driver for you.
Yeah. I think once I started realizing I was helping people, that I could actually genuinely help people, it started becoming more than just a side hustle and more than just a job or a way of making money. It was a business that had value in a way that kind of spoke to, you know, some of the things that I love in life, which is giving and serving. And so, you know, I had the opportunity to really serve people in a different way than I expected. And once that happened and I realized that it was happening, I started to feel differently about the business. And then it became something that wasn't even an option. It became something that I had to exist in order to serve a group of people who needed me. And then it spun into something else. It spun into something very viable.
I think that's a fantastic perspective to adopt, right? You know, anyone who has a business who's watching this, whether they have one or they're thinking of starting one, you know, being aware, having the awareness that, okay, I may sell just a product or a service, or I may develop a product or a service, but what's actually behind that? Of course, yeah, it's fantastic. And almost a side bonus if you love what you do, that you get some monetary reward from it. But you're actually, how are you actually helping and serving people? Because there almost is always a way, I think, that you're helping and serving people. You know, you could just be selling them a product, but how does that product help them save time? Does it help them save time? Does it help them save money? Does it help them save effort. There's for yourself, you're putting roofs over heads at the end of the day. That's the basic way to look at it. Or you're giving people a much more desirable place that they want to live in, or perhaps renovating a place to something that looks like somewhere they want to live instead of somewhere they don't. So there's a lot of joy that comes from that, a lot of good vibes, and yeah, I think it's not always something that business owners look at, a perspective of how am I helping and serving others. But I find that really interesting that when you began to focus on that and that manifested and that grew, then that kind of led to you having a very viable business. And I'd love to know, going into some triumphs and wins now, because of course, let's talk about those. How long after you had that realization that I'm helping and serving others here, and this is really why I'm doing this, and this is fantastic, and great that the bills start getting paid, the money starts rolling in, because I mean that's a good point of business to get to. How long did it take you from that point till you were getting to millions of dollars business, and then obviously you sold it? Like, how did that play out?
Yeah, so it took a few years. I would say maybe 4 years before the business got to about $1 million. And it was at that point, I remember talking to the bank about purchasing a property as an investment. And the banker said, yeah, sure, I'll lend you, $1 million to purchase something. And I was so surprised that I could even get a loan for $1 million. I mean, that's ridiculous amount of money to me. Like, I could get a loan for $1 million to purchase something. That's crazy. So other people and someone who I trusted in the banking industry recognized that the business was in a successful position. And so it started off at that moment that I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is real. Like, I'm part of this business that is really successful, and I didn't even realize or recognize how successful it was. And so after that, the milestones just kept coming in. Like, I just kept having moment after moment after moment that things it started to really make sense, and the opportunities just kept coming. But up until that point, I mean, it took, that 4-year time period for me to realize, like, okay, this is a real thing. Like, this is a real legitimate business, and it is successful, and it can actually continue. And it's hard work. And trust me, it was very hard work. I questioned it every year. Every year was so challenging, but the wins of serving people and having them tell me, oh my gosh, thank you so much, and sending me like praise emails, sending like thank you notes, just having people's understanding of how important the role I played really made a difference in every day. And sometimes it was putting out small fires, and sometimes it was putting out big fires. And having someone turn around and say, oh my gosh, I couldn't have done this without you, or thank you so much. Like, you don't know how much this means to me. I tried to pay attention to those, because those are the ones that really make you want to continue to do business. And then really recognizing, I remember going to a business meeting, a sales meeting, where I was going to pitch the business to, or services to, a group of people. And I left the meeting feeling like they can't get better service than me, and they need me. Like, they need my business. They've been in a position where things went wrong. Things went horribly wrong. They were abused and mistreated by the service provider before me. And, that was sad for them. And I can help them. And there are things that I can do to make their lives better and bring them to a better place. And it's my responsibility to be able to do that. So once I acknowledged that situation, once I acknowledged that that was my responsibility, I knew that I had to just keep going. But I got to a point where the constant burnout and stress of having the business and working the business the way that I was too overwhelming for me. I think I got to a stage that I can remember specifically, that, you know, this business was my baby and I wanted it to keep growing, but I didn't know where I fit in at anymore, because it was running really well. Like things were running, things were growing, things were accelerating, but my role was changing throughout that process. And I had to recognize that my role maybe was not to be there and to let it run. So I actually had a very perfect moment where it was time for me to exit, and I got the opportunity to exit and sell. And I mean, it couldn't have been any more ideal as far as timing goes.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting how it went for you, because a lot of people go from, and look, correct me if I might be wrong here, they go from, you know, being an operator of a business, and then they usually switch to an owner, which is someone who's quite far removed from the daily operations. And then, you know, they might go to a point of selling completely and you know, letting that go completely and taking that, you know, that big payday, and quite rightly deserved. But it seemed like you went perhaps from operator right to selling. Is that kind of how it went? There was no like point between where you were the owner and you were overseeing.
Yeah. No, I went from, I had a turn of events, and actually what ended up happening to me was I got pregnant for the second time. And when my baby came is when I realized that my attention to one baby had to shift to the other baby. So my priorities just changed, and that process of my priorities changing and my responsibilities changing, I realized that being an operator and being as involved in the business as I was couldn't continue in the same vein. And so I took that opportunity to really completely focus on being a mother, and, you know, shifted my role completely to something different. So it was, again, like the perfect timing for me to pivot out of that business and really focus my time and energy on something else.
Yeah, and what better a thing to focus your time and energy of than the birth of a new child, right? I don't have children, but I strongly believe that if, you know, two, if not one, parents can be around as much as they can for that first 5 years of a child's life, it's really going to help that child just be a wonderful person, essentially, you know, with a really good support network. So, I mean, I guess it gave you the opportunity to do that, and why not, frankly, if you can, you know, if you're in a good financial position and you can give your newborn that time and energy that you want to give to it, go for it, take it, seize it. So then where are you at today? Are you still full-time mom today and just enjoying loving that?
No, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I can't help myself.
I had a feeling that there might have been something else that you got up to in the meantime.
Yeah. So one of the things I realized was when I was a mom the first time around with my youngest, when I started my business, it took away a lot of time from being around her and really spending with her. And so, you know, I sacrificed my blood, sweat, and tears to pour into that business, which obviously afforded me the life that I have now. But this time around, I wanted to do things very different and very intentionally. And so because I have a lot more freedom financially, I'm able to create a business that fits into my life the way that I want it, versus having something that takes up all of my time because I'm pouring all of my energy into it. And so I've crafted my life with a lot more intention, and I'm working my business around my family time. And so, you know, I started, because I have the experience that I have in real estate, and I've been in real estate now for over 15 years, and I've built this, you know, multi-million-dollar company. I can teach other people how to do it too. I can teach people who are just getting started building their business. And I've been working with clients who have had their business for years and then trying to scale to the next level. And so I've been coaching them on really how to grow their business and really how to build it with a good foundation, create efficiencies, be profitable, and grow it to multi-million-dollar levels and beyond that, so that they can really have the life that they want to have, whatever that looks like for them later on in life. And so I do that, and I do it in a way that it fits perfectly in with my life, and I can really dedicate the time and energy and effort into raising my family and really giving them the time and energy and dedicated focused time with them so that they can grow their business. So it's a very different type of real estate business, but I love it. Love it.
It's a great transition, and you've managed to keep the continuity there of helping others and serving others, right? Because, you, as you said, 15 years in the game, you've got some serious gems there, some serious nuggets. And if people, it's easy to start a business, right? I think a lot of people think it's really difficult. I think when you actually make the decision you want to do it, it's quite easy. And with the thing that we're using right now, this thing that they call the internet, which is now reached a level of maturity that everyone can take advantage of. It's easy. It's easier than ever. But you get to a point. I found you get to a point in business where you hit stumbling blocks. You hit just things on the road that you don't expect, and they always come at the time that you least expect them. And having someone that you can just have a chat with, get some good, honest advice. They can tell you how they perhaps got out of that situation. Is just so valuable. So do you coach people just in the space of real estate businesses or all businesses?
I focus on real estate specifically, but I've done some coaching for a lot of small businesses. So I did a workshop this summer that was dedicated to women of color and helping them to start from zero and grow their business to the six-figure level. And that was really fun. It was a very short little project, but I enjoyed watching them grow and thrive. And I knew that by doing that, I was helping affect them personally and their family. And that really brought me a lot of joy. It's probably something I might do in the future again, but right now I focus more primarily on real estate.
Yeah. A question I have to ask you, having that, being in real estate for so long, and how do you think like 2020 has affected real estate in the States?
Yeah. So, I lived through and worked through the first real estate, or the last real estate crisis, I should say, in 2008. And I saw a lot of families affected. I saw a lot of people go into foreclosure. But I saw on the flip side of that, I saw a lot of investors be able to invest in property. And so, there are people who, are things are working really well. And then there are people who things are not working really well. And it's kind of a mixed bag, and it's challenging for a lot of people. But with the things going on right now, one of the challenges that I'm seeing, especially in the US market and DC specifically, is, with COVID, a lot of states have implemented what's called an eviction moratorium, which means you can't evict a tenant for being in a property. And that means, like, for a person like me who owns a rental property, if my tenant doesn't pay rent, I can't evict them, and I can't put in someone who is a paying tenant. Now, if I am in a good financial position, I can pay for my mortgage and their mortgage. But if I'm not, then I'm put in a position where I financially cannot afford to pay for the expenses of a property that is no longer getting any cash flow. And so my prediction for next year is that there are going to be some landlords who are going to go into foreclosure because they have not had any income coming in and are no longer able to financially support owning several rental properties. So that'll start happening unless there's some type of another relief bill that comes out or something like that. But I suspect that there'll be some interesting moves in the market come early next year, depending on how this pandemic continues to play out.
Yeah, well, let's hope that some kind of relief or some kind of plan comes for people in that situation, because, of course, there's winners and losers, out of the situation. But I think that's pretty unfortunate and harsh that, just from the outside looking in here without knowing much background on how it all really works, that, you're really forced into a bit of a impossible situation there as a landlord, aren't you? You can't get the person who's in there who's not paying you the rent out. You can't get someone else who can pay you the rent in. That's a bit of a rock and a hard place, really. But I mean, like yeah, pretty tough. But like you say, my next question was going to be, how long does the fallout take to happen? And we can see from 2008, it takes a while, doesn't it? It really takes 12 to 18 months to actually see it play out and the results of what initially caused it to happen actually, take effect.
Yeah, stuff like this. I mean, the last real estate crisis, the effects of that lasted years. And so, the fallout of that took a while, and it was progressive over time. And so I expect to kind of see the same thing this time around during this crisis is, we'll have the effects of this crisis that continue for years to come. Just because, things don't just stop. There's no, end. There's no particular end to something. It just kind of gradually fades away. So I'm not too sure exactly what that's going to look like, but I expect it'll be something that affects us for a little while longer.
Who knows, right? Who knows? That's the thing. Who knows? But one thing's for sure is that there will be, of course, opportunities that come out of this time, whether they're cleverly disguised as obstacles, as challenges, as problems, it depends on your perception and obviously the situation you're in. But there will be opportunities that come out of it for sure in the area of real estate. There in Washington, D.C., throughout the United States, here in Australia and worldwide for people who are, I think it'd be a good time, a good opportunity for people who perhaps aren't on the property ladder to pick up some bargains. Perhaps people who are on the ladder to get their first investment property, to get their first rental property, and I don't want to detract away from all the people that have had a bad result out of this situation. Of course, I'm empathic and I feel sorry for them, send them out all my love and blessings. But, you have to say that there will be some opportunities that come out of it for sure.
Yeah. And one of the things I've learned from, the last crisis is it can be mutually beneficial. It can be a win-win situation. They have investors who have money, and then there are people who can't pay for their home. And instead of going into foreclosure, they are able to work with an investor who can relieve them of that burden. So there are opportunities for people to get out of their very challenging situation. And then there are people who are able to take advantage of that situation and help someone who's in need. So, I mean, it can be a win-win, even as challenging as it is, because the worst case scenario is someone goes into foreclosure and no one wants to really go through that process. If you find someone who is an investor to be able to sell your home to, then that's probably the better option. And so there are ways that I think things can definitely be mutually beneficial, even in situations like this.
Yeah, there's always many options, that's for sure. Now let's talk about the word hustle. Of course, it's key in the title of this podcast, Hunger for the Hustle. But I would love to know, Rhianna, when you got pregnant at 17, and that would have, I've seen it. It sends some young ladies' lives in a certain path that's not always fantastic and amazing. It's not always super productive, but of course, it didn't really stop you. It inspired you to create, to motivate, to drive. And I'd love to know, how you define that word hustle and what's really driven your hunger for it throughout.
So hustle for me means that I am driving forward. I've always been a very driven person, but I've had the attitude that I already have succeeded. I just need to figure out the path to get there. And so mindset, I think, is, 80% of success. I think, doing the work is definitely worthwhile, but there are going to be ups and downs to everything that you do. And especially in business, there's really high highs and there's very low lows. And there are times when you question whether or not you should continue. But those are the moments where you have to decide that I can't turn back. There's no turning around. There's no exit plan. There is only forward, and that's the direction that I have to move. And I've always had that mindset that there's no option. I have to succeed. There's no plan B. There's only plan A, which is success. And so that drive has always been there for me. And so I've hustled and I've, put my head down and I've done what I've had to do in order to get to the place where I've gotten to. And every now and then I'll look up and I'll be able to recognize the success that I've had. But, being able to really get a sense that there's no turning back, I think is what hustle means.
That's fantastic. I love the definition. It's to one-way street and U-turns certainly aren't allowed. It's true, right? It's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are I'd love to know some goals, some dreams, some aspirations of the things you're working on right now, as a coach of what you talked about.
Yeah. So with the coaching that I've been doing, I've really been making an impact in people's lives. And I really want to feel like I'm doing that on a broader scale. I want to affect more people. I want more people to grow businesses. I think entrepreneurship is the path to financial freedom. I've been able to experience that for myself, and I want other people to experience that for themselves. I think that having that option gives you a certain amount of control and stability. And right now, there's so many people I see suffering. They're losing their jobs, and their control is not there because they're not the ones who own their jobs. I think it's time for us to really own our own jobs, and that means going into entrepreneurship. And so, I want to help people who are in the real estate space specifically. And so I'm coming up with all types of different ways that I can coach people at the different stages that they're in. And I want to help a lot of people. Right now, I'm creating a course to help them get started. So people who have the idea in their head, but aren't too sure the steps that they can take to start. So I'm creating something right now. Should have that available starting January of next year. So I'm excited to be able to really launch that to the world and help more people become entrepreneurs and just get on that path to financial freedom.
I love it. And I'll look forward to seeing the program to come together. And what a great way to start 2021, with a new project ready to roll out. That's great. Yeah, a great way to start. I know a lot of people start the year with, I forgot what they're called now. Resolutions, of course, New Year's resolutions, I've never been one to have resolutions. I'm like, I've got plenty of goals anyway. I reckon I'm tracking along all right. Yep, of course, just make the goals, keep setting them, keep going for them. I think resolutions can be, they're kind of like, I look at them like a fad diet, because they're like, you go, everyone's taken one up at some point. Most people haven't seen it out, and even if they do see it out, they go back to the old ways. They put the weight back on. They end up looking just how they used to look.
Yeah.
So I think the resolution to me seems to be almost has temporary value.
It does. Yeah. I mean, saying that you're going to do anything in January, starting January 1st, doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if it's a goal, it should start now. This should be something that you start right away. I've always been a goal-oriented person. So I've always had my goals for the year, and I've always been, driving towards those goals. I've always tried to be able to achieve and accomplish those goals and go in a certain direction. So I've never been the type to have resolutions necessarily, but my goals tend to start in November before all the January people. Mine tend to start in November. So I reflect on the year and I create new goals for the next year, and I usually implement them starting December 1st and really start to think about what I want my life to look like. And this year is funny. I did 20 years. So instead of doing 1 year out, I'm looking 20 years ahead, and I'm really trying to plan out what my life is going to look like 20 years from now. So it's definitely something that I think everyone should do, is really start focusing on some goals, not resolutions, goals specifically, achieving those and accomplishing those goals.
Well, I've got to say, you've inspired me there, Rhianna. I think I'm going to get started a lot earlier this year on next year's goals. I think I've got a long drive coming up in the next couple of days. 6 hour drive, perfect time to get some voice notes mapped out and have a good think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or listen to a good book that's going to inspire you to create those goals. I
Yeah.
love drive time. I use driving
Yeah.
time to really like refocus and look at things that I've done for the year and reflect and listen to other inspirational people so that I'm ready to like write my goals. So yeah, that might be a perfect time for that.
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm listening to Gary Vaynerchuk's book "Crush It" at the moment. No, "Crushing It." Sorry, the second one on the audio version. Great book. It's fired me up and inspired me,
Yeah,
particularly in the world of creating content for my brand and yeah, making sure that I'm producing enough of it and that it's quality stuff. So yeah, really great book for anyone that's watching and thinking about getting started in business or just making content for their personal brand. Any of Gary Vaynerchuk's books, Crush It and Crushing It. I can see you nod smiling and agreeing. So I guess you must have read them yourself.
I haven't read that book in particular, but I've read Gary's books. One of my favorites is Think and Grow Rich. I think I read that every year or two, just because I think I learn something new every time I listen to it. It puts me in a really good headspace to be able to make decisions. So that's one of
Yeah.
my favorites. Yeah.
There's not many people that I meet in business who haven't heard, read, or seen that book in some form, whether they've just had it on the audio, had it on an actual physical book. I don't think it would be easy to say it's an overrated book, but let me tell you, once you've read it, you'll realise why everyone enjoys it.
Exactly.
It's a real game changer. Yeah,
And
real game changer.
It's timeless. It's something that I keep revisiting because every time I visit it, it's just my head is in a different space and I absorb it in a different way. So I think it's one of those things that you can just keep revisiting over and over again.
That's a great point. I mean, it was written in the early 1900s, but it's timeless, and the world was such a different place then. The world's been through multiple huge changes as it has this year, but when it did then, from like we had 2 world wars since it was written, essentially, and it was just completely, the world's completely changed, but it's still so on point when you read it. It's because of the things it talks about, which is a lot about the mind that hasn't really changed for hundreds of years, I would say. So we're getting to the end of this wonderful interview, Rhianna. I've really enjoyed spending this time with you, learning more about your story, your hunger for the hustle, and what's coming up and what you're working on now. But we usually close out this interview with 3 hot tips for any of the folks watching. And yeah, I would love 3 hot tips from you to just anyone that's watching this that wants to get started in business, perhaps works for someone else right now and isn't happy, thinks, as you said, they're aware that following the path of entrepreneurship leads to financial freedom, but how do they get started? What are the hot tips you would give them?
Yeah. So my first is get your mind right. So always be in the frame of mind and have the mindset that you are a success. You just need to find the path to get there. I think one of the things that's always challenging about business is if you're not all in, it can not go well. So definitely have your mind completely in the form of just your vision and have blinders on, and you are just focused and nothing can stop you. I think what's great for that is like creating a morning routine where you pump yourself up every day and really just tell yourself how amazing you are and create routines where you're really building yourself up, because it can get really challenging being an entrepreneur. So that's my first tip. My second tip is build a support network and have people around you that are going to encourage you to keep going, and having the support you need and the people you need in your life that you can turn to and be vulnerable with and open up to when things get really challenging. Because I think we beat ourselves up and we tend to hold ourselves to this high expectation that no one has for us. We really, make things very challenging for ourselves. And so I think sometimes we need to be brought back to reality and have a different perspective, and having someone with an outside perspective who loves us, who wants to support us and wants us to be successful is really key in every point and stage of creating a business. And the last thing is, if you already know, and just kind of having in your mind, if you already know that you were successful, what would you do? Like making that next right choice. Because you're going to fail, and you're going to fail constantly. And I think, the faster I can fail, the better for me, because then I can figure out what's the next thing I can do. So just knowing that you are already going to get there, that you already have that written for yourself. Success is already there. You just need to figure out the next step, that one little next baby step, and take that next right step, and then just keep taking the next right step until you get to your destination. So those are my 3
I
tips.
love that advice.
Yeah.
Seriously, that is sage advice there for anyone that's, in that space of thinking of starting and going out on their own, doing their own thing. And I don't think, I don't think you could find a better time than now, with the way the world is, the way the world's changing, I think this is a time, good time where everyone's had some quiet time, some time to think, some time to reflect, some time to, have some space away from people that they usually have a lot of contact with, I know I've had had some time away from a lot of people, and I've realised actually some of them people I don't want to really spend much time with anymore, because they were no good for me. They were no good. They didn't align with me, who I am, and the mindset I have. And something you've talked about multiple times here, Rhianna, on the podcast today is having the mindset of success, and already seeing yourself as accomplished in whatever you're going towards. The stoic mindset, as a lot of people say. And I think there's a really, really, really big beneficial value to that in the world of business. Already seeing yourself as having achieved the goal, and just knowing it's already done, it's already there in your mind. You're already a success, and that you just got to take the steps to make it play out and make it happen.
Exactly.
I think that's one major thing I've taken away from you today. And it's something I already knew, but it may not be something that the big guys watching, or watching now live or later know. And I would just really attest to that. Yeah, and it will help pull you through the times that are tough, because absolutely. Life is tough, of course.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Rhianna, I'm going to drop your social media handle in the comments, but do you just want to tell the folks where they can find you and follow you and connect with you if they wish to do so?
So my handle is Rhianna M. Campbell on all the social media platforms, so you can find me that way. You can also go to my website if you're interested in real estate coaching. It's www.properplanning.realestate. And I will, you can schedule a call with me and we can chat, and I can help you grow your business. So I'm excited about that.
That's a great domain. I love it. I love domains that just tell you what's happening in the title. Just leave no guesswork. Rhianna, I've had a lot of fun speaking to you today. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks.
Really enjoyed it. And I hope you've all enjoyed it, folks, from wherever you're watching on whatever platform. If you have enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you think that you know someone that could get some value out of this episode, tag them, pass it on to them. That will help more people. And in fact, you have helped someone else as well. So, Rhianna, thanks for joining me. Take care, everyone.